Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Tony Piazza. I'm a 100% disabled veteran. I had my awakening in 2018 after a suicide attempt and divine intervention that put me on a path working with healers and shamans and holistic doctors around the world, as well as psychics and channelers and all of that. I've been guided to share my story. I've actually been putting it off for years. Because I don't like being in front of a camera, but here we go, so bear with me. I'm going to give you a little bit of my backstory, where I came from, how I was raised, the trauma and stuff that I endured, and then lead up to my awakening where I was yanked out of my body and wrapped in the unconditional love of God and then put on this path. So essentially, I was beat and abused from the time I was a child. My dad would beat me if I peed in my diapers. My mom actually had to hide me to change. He was very abusive. He actually put sawed-off shotguns to our heads and threatened to kill us and all sorts of stuff. So my mom took off and left when I was 4 years old. My brother was 2 and came to Wyoming to live with her parents. And my dad, that was my real dad, who was very abusive, ended up getting remarried, and that woman had a daughter, and then they ended up having a son together. And when that girl was 5 years old, my dad beat her to death in front of my 3-year-old half-brother. She has since come to me in ceremony, and I've helped her process and move forward. But then my mom remarried another guy who was also very abusive. He would fly off the hinges and beat us and all sorts of stuff. So I had my nervous system was always in fight or flight. So when I actually did fall asleep, I would pee myself because I would crash so hard that I wouldn't even wake up to go to the bathroom, and that was something very embarrassing when I was growing up because I couldn't control it. But essentially, I started working out at 14 years old and put on 30 pounds of muscle over the summer working out with the football team, and he attacked me again, and I was able to defend myself and fight back. And that started my addiction to the gym, where I would work out twice a day, and I also started binge drinking at that time to escape my feelings. But by the time I was 16, 17 years old, I was benching over 300 pounds. I was beating up bullies throughout my school career and taking my anger out on them and playing football. So I ended up turning down some football scholarships when I graduated because my girlfriend, my high school sweetheart, was a year behind me. I didn't feel confident. I didn't feel like I had the support, didn't have a father figure. And then I was lost for a bit. So she graduated the next year. We moved to Denver, and I was doing a job for a grain inspection company, essentially testing all the corn and grains that come through in semis and trains and running them through sifters and then giving them to these old guys to calculate the grade of the grain, and that's how the truckers get paid. Essentially, I'd show up at 9 and leave by 11, and I'd get paid for a full day. But it was not fulfilling. And then I lived with my girlfriend and her older sister. Her older sister was dating a guy from the town that we grew up in, and he came to visit, and we hit it off and were like best friends from the moment we met each other. It was kind of crazy. Fast forward, I ended up breaking up with my girlfriend. He broke up with the sister and invited me to come live with him in his house in Sheridan, Wyoming, where I grew up. And so I did that, and he was actually an ex-sniper in the Marines and convinced me to join the military to get out of the town because it's a small town, it's the same thing over and over again, everyone just drinks and works, and not a lot of opportunity. And so he talked me into joining the Navy. I got a 93 on my ASVAB, which I was used to acing tests in school without studying or trying. I hated school. I never did homework, but I still did good enough because I can study and retain information, kind of like photographic memory, and then pass the test and then be done with it. So essentially, I end up talking to a recruiter that's from the town 2 hours away, and he convinces me that I was looking into being a pilot or firefighter, and he says that I could do both of these things with this job, which was a complete lie. And it was ABH, so directing the aircraft and setting them up to launch, and then also parking them in the hangar bay and doing crash and salvage firefighting. So I went into the military, and in boot camp I got promoted, and then went to A school, which was in Pensacola, Florida, and I was honor grad. I was top of my class there. And I was supposed to get first pick at orders, and I really wanted to go to California. But unfortunately, the second class petty officer that was handing out the orders was hooking up with a girl in the class below mine, and she was from California, so he gave her my orders and sent me to the East Coast, which was horrible. I ended up in Virginia on the CVN 77, the Bush. And we were in the shipyards for a while, and essentially I got married to my girlfriend at that time, because in order to live off the ship, you have to get married. It basically doubles your paycheck, because otherwise you're stuck on the ship full time. And I was out to sea sometimes 280 days out of the year, and it was really rough on the relationship, and she was getting arrested for drunk driving, and I believe cheating, because there was a lot of evidence for that. And essentially I finally went on deployment in 2011, and it was about 6-8 months, I can't remember. And on that deployment, I worked out and worked, and essentially at that time I was benching like 450 pounds, really fit, in shape. And then I got tripped up on a ladder well down a hatch. I had my front foot on, and then someone clipped my back foot. So then I fell forward, and then the hatch is kind of leaning like this, so I blocked my head from hitting it, and then went straight down, and I grabbed the railing, blew out my shoulders, ripped muscle off my sternum, and then broke my back. But at the time I didn't know that. I laughed it off because of the adrenaline, and I have a really high pain tolerance. Like I said, I grew up fighting, and I used to punch heavy bags till my hands and knuckles were bloody, and I had a lot of anger issues. I'd punch holes through walls, and essentially I didn't look like I was injured. I was really buff. And then I kept going to medical and complaining about this pain in my back, and my hands would actually turn purple. And the officer kept telling me that you need to be able to do your job, like this and that, because there's so many people in the military that try to get out of work because they're lazy. But I grew up doing manual labor from the time I was 14 and could work circles around these people. But I was in severe pain, and I'd have to sneak off and pin my knees to my chest in my rack, like the thing you sleep in. This is it. So I was having to sleep in that. But you pull your knees. I pulled my knees to my chest just to give myself some relief. And then they basically convinced me that it was in my head, and I started doubting myself, because I was like, maybe it's because we're out to sea so long and I'm just being a pussy, this and that. And then it just kept getting worse, and I finally went over that officer's head and got MRIs, and they said, oh shit, you need shoulder surgery and possible back surgery. So they ended up sending me off the ship and to basically print IDs and stuff like that, where I got injections in my back and shoulder surgery. And I went into a deep state. They put me on all these Percocets, and first it was like I needed 2, then it was 4, and then it was several times a day. And I was very depressed because I didn't have my body, right? That was one of my outlets to deal with emotion, and I lost it. And so I was drinking and doing pain pills, and then I finally was like, I got to cut myself off these. Like, I can't live like this. So I cut myself off cold turkey from the pain pills, and I went into a very deep depression. And my roommate was out to sea, and I went and took his brand new 1911 Kimber pistol and flipped the safety off, and I pulled the trigger, and somehow the safety was on by a hair. It was divine intervention for sure. And I had a flash of my mom, and I was like, I can't do this to her, you know. So I toughed it out longer, eventually got out honorably, and moved to Arizona, where I was going to look into being a pilot or a firefighter, still toughing out my injuries. And I found out very quickly that the flight hours in the Embry-Riddle and another flight school out here were not covered anymore by the GI Bill, because some schools got caught maxing it out without the benefits and taking advantage of it. And that's the most expensive part of flight school. So then I wanted to be a firefighter, but because I didn't know anyone out here, it was way competitive. So then I went to school for engineering at the community college. I was not motivated at all. I was working in the bars, first on Mill Ave in Tempe, the college area, doing security and helping bar back. And there I was working with some really roided out, jacked guys, and they convinced me to take steroids. And at the time I was kind of skinny fat, probably weighed 216. Well, I know I did. And I started steroids, and I went from 216 down to 197, back up to 235, 240 pounds within 7 weeks, because of my muscle memory, and then obviously the help of the steroids. And I ended up blowing out my shoulder again on my 4th set of 315 for 12. And it just added to my pain and agony again. And then I got moved to Scottsdale, Arizona. I started working in bars out there, doing the bar backing and bartending a little bit. I was cut early from work one night, and I went out with some of the other bartenders that were also cut. And Scottsdale is kind of like a mini Vegas. So we went out, and I didn't have to wait in lines. We were getting free shots, and I was slamming shots left and right. And then I got talked into trying cocaine for the first time. So I did cocaine, and then I was wasted. I actually made sure that my truck wouldn't get towed where it was, because I did not plan on driving. But I ran into someone I knew, and they talked me into driving. And I got a block away from work, and I snapped out of it. And I was like, I have to turn around. We have to call an Uber. And so right when I whipped a U-turn to pull around, I got pulled over by a cop, and they ran my license. And I found out that my license was suspended in Wyoming for a $60 reinstatement fee, or a letter stating I no longer live there. And I hadn't lived there for 6 years, so I had no idea. Well, if you get a DUI on a suspended license, it's an automatic felony, aggravated DUI. So essentially that took away all careers that I was leaning towards. And I thought they were going to drop it to a misdemeanor, because that's pretty dumb, especially if I didn't know that my license was suspended in Wyoming, but they would not budge. And so it took them a year to process me and put me in jail. In that year, I was like, if they're going to make me a felon, I'll be a good one. And I always liked the movie Scarface. So I started dealing cocaine, steroids, and other drugs. And while working in the bar. And then essentially I had talked to someone that just got out of prison and had connections, because I was trying to get cheaper prices. And he said he'd help me out. And then I didn't hear from him or see him for months. And then he showed back up at the bar. And I was like, hey man, where have you been? And he's like, hey, we need to talk. I was like, okay. And he's like, you know how you ask for cheaper prices? And I was like, yeah. He's like, have you noticed a lot of Mexicans in and out of here? And I was like, I don't know, on and off. And he's like, well, the cartel have been keeping an eye on you to see if you're trustworthy or not. And they've offered to do a meeting with you. And he's like, but I got to warn you, they're going to put a gun to your head, and that, like, you're in, you're in. There's no getting out of it. So this is your opportunity to accept or decline. And I was like, I am going to decline this. This is more of a hobby for me. So that was pretty intense. I ended up going to jail in Tent City in Arizona. Many people have heard of it. They make you wear the pink underwear and socks. It's out in the middle of the desert. and it was during the middle of the summer, and it was like 150 degrees in the tents when they'd shoot the little temp gun, and so you're constantly sitting around with a soaked wet towel around your neck, and then every morning they would wake you up at like 2 a.m. and then chain you up, and you go to the food factory where you make the nasty slop and all the other foods that they feed you. So I was working there, and then I don't remember what time you get back, I think about 2, and then you're sitting around doing nothing. So it was 4 months of that, and I didn't tell my mom, so she was looking for me on my birthday, and I was in jail, and so she panicked and finally found me, and then started putting money on my books, and I just felt so ashamed for letting her down, and I didn't know how to handle that. So then I get out, and then I start doing sales jobs. I worked for Dun & Bradstreet, doing business credit reports, and I was doing well, and then my nerve damage started shooting off. So I would get muscle spasms, like my chest would bounce, all of this would just be flexing and doing all sorts of stuff, severe nerve pain to where it was hard for me to turn my head. And then it atrophied my right arm till it was 5 inches smaller than my left. And it got so bad that I was in and out of the hospital constantly, and I lost my jobs. And then at this time I was also dating a girl who was very toxic, and I caught her cheating, and it was just like narcissistic abuse, and I didn't have confidence in myself at that time because I couldn't even take care of myself. I reconnected with my dad, who I didn't know all growing up, and at the time we didn't know that he had actually killed this girl. We only knew that he spent 2 or 3 years in prison, and he had a history of anger, so I thought that's why he was there. He told us that she died from a seizure and hitting her head, and then I later found out the truth. But I reconnected with him, and he was dying of cancer, and I was on probation for 5 years with random piss tests 5 times a month. The judge hated me, and I didn't know why. They would put me in classes, I'd help teach them with the POs. The POs all loved me, but when they tried to put in a good word, she'd get so furious. And like, I don't know what you did to her, but she hates you. So this woman would throw me in jail nonstop and reset my probation. So like, you had to call in every day or use an app. Sometimes the app would fail, and then I would get blamed and thrown in jail. Or, and then they tell you, well, you should have called too. I was like, what's the point of the app? And then if you have to call in on Sundays, even though there's no P test those days. And I would forget to call in on a Sunday, and she'd throw me in jail again. So I'd have to go sleep on concrete for the weekend with a bad back and all this pain with drug addicts and homeless people. And it was just this cycle of torture that was so horrible. And I tried to change judges. They wouldn't let me do it. And then it came to one point where I had missed a call-in on a Sunday, and I actually missed a P test because I was working and going to school. And so they tried to throw me in jail for 4 days in the middle of the week so that I'd lose my job and fail school. And I cussed out the judge and told her to go fuck herself. And then I was storming out of the courtroom, ready to fight cops. And a woman chases after me, and she says, "Stop, stop. I want to help you. You have anger issues and PTSD." And I was like, no shit. And then this woman was an angel, and she ended up doing so much for me, way outside of her job scope, going above and beyond to support me and help me in this situation. And had it not been for her, I probably would be dead or in prison for sure. So what happened was I had all that stuff going on. Girlfriend cheating on me, couldn't go see my dad to help him. Probation that was throwing me in and out of jail. I was in severe pain to the point where when they would take my blood pressure, nurses would start panicking, thinking I was gonna pass out because it was so high, and it was just from the pain. And so feeling defeated, low energy, severe pain daily, and all the other stuff compiled on top of it, I wanted out. I was done. I was deep in depression, and I didn't see a way out of it. And I even remember calling my mom and telling her, like, I know you don't want to hear this, but I don't want to be here anymore. And I meant it. And so then I started drinking nonstop for 2 weeks, a bottle of whiskey plus a day, and doing cocaine, just praying for my organs to give out. And it was sorry, it was 2 weeks of me doing this or more, and then I started pissing blood, and I thought it was going to happen. And then I passed out one night on my back, and I was throwing up, and my girlfriend couldn't move me. And then something came over me, and basically, I don't remember this at all, but I got up robotically and then went and showered. And then the next day, I told her, like, I'm going to turn myself in the VA for suicide. And she bought me a dog, trying to help things, a little puppy. And then I turned myself in the next day, and that was the longest walk of my life to ask for help, because I've always been the protector, provider, the one that everyone can count on. I always had a pure heart, even though I made bad decisions. I was always genuine and authentic and cared for people, and I had integrity outside of doing illegal activities. But I didn't trust the law, I didn't trust adults. So I go in, they take me in for 4 days, and then they convince me to claim the disability from the military that I didn't think I deserved, because I didn't get injured in battle, and I knew people lost way more than me, so I didn't want to claim it. So they convinced me to claim my disability, and I was in there for 4 days. And on the 4th day, when I got out, it was like 2 p.m. and I get home, and then I go to let my puppy outside to go to the bathroom. And we lived in this apartment complex in Phoenix, and there's a big grass patch between all the buildings. So I let him out, and he runs out into the grass, and as he's running, a hawk flies over my head, nearly clipping me, and I thought it was going to get my dog, and it snatched up a little bird right in front of him, and then flew up off to my left, and then I see 2 butterflies spiraling in the sky, and I was like, that was weird. And I later learned it was like about rebirth that I was about to go through. That night, the cops showed up at my door to take me to jail because I had missed my probation hearing, because I was in the psych ward. And at that point, my soul was done. My soul was trying to leave my body. I was stumbling around, falling all over the place, no coordination, and I hit like the bottom of the bottom. I was like, if they get in this house, I'm cutting my throat. I'm done. And I fell on the ground in the bathroom, and I said, if there is a higher power, please make them go away. I'll do whatever you want. And I meant it from the core of my being. And the cops leave. And then that night, I had dreams about the Holy Trinity, man and woman combining into light, frequency and vibration. And I woke up at 3 in the morning with this energy charging through me and downloads of information, thinking I'm going crazy. So I'm researching the Holy Trinity, and then it leads to Bach, the composer, and his compositions on the Trinity. And I copy and pasted those into my notes. And there was one highlighted in blue, St. Michael, who I'm named after, my middle name. I was raised Catholic, and I hated seeing the judgment, shame, and guilt and all the stuff that my mom went through, so I always despised religion. So anyways, it said St. Michael, and I was like, why is that highlighted? I'll go pull it up on YouTube. Pulled up the song, and as the song started playing, my whole body was flooded with an electric charge and energy, and I felt this overwhelming sense of love and peace that I'd never felt before in my life. And I collapsed on the ground crying, and I was out of my body looking at myself, and I said, I am so sorry for how I've been living. Please just give me guidance. And this was like a really profound moment. I was not spiritual. I was a meathead from Wyoming. Never even looked into any of this stuff. And so that completely, I was shown a new path. And that day I was researching all sorts of stuff, going down rabbit holes, and I went to take my dog out to the other side of the complex, and he was silver with green eyes. He was a little lab pit mix. And I stood him on this stump. I have images of all this stuff too. I stood him on a stump, and I take a picture of him, and then I look left, and there's 2 bird wings laying perfectly in the gravel with no other part of the bird, and I just get a download of fallen angels, and all my hair stands up. So now I'm researching that. And then that night I went to sleep, and I had a dream that a friend of mine that I'd known since 5th grade, Brandon, was in my apartment, and he was yelling, "The cops are here, the cops are here." And I ran out, and I looked out my kitchen window to the front door, and no one was there. Then the phone on the counter rang, and I picked it up, and I was like, "Hello, hello?" And I hear people talking. It's almost like I got butt dialed. And then it gets really clear, and it's like deep voices in like an echoey great hall with music playing, and I hear, "He's going to be the one that's stepping up." And I was like, are they talking about me? And it registered as a yes. "We're going to push this to happen faster than we expected. We're giving him keys to the 4th." And then I woke up 3 in the morning again, charged with this energy, pacing. It led into biblical stuff when I was researching, and then I felt like I was missing something. So I'm pacing my house, and I decided to go walk outside barefoot. And at the time, back in the day, I would wear my shoes into the lake. I didn't take my shoes off. So I opened the door, and 3 $1 bills fell from my door and landed next to a rock that had the engraving that said "Live" on it. And I was just in shock. I was like, who is fucking with me right now? And then I go stand in the grass patch next to where those bird wings were when they were no longer there. And I look back towards my apartment, and there's a tree, and the outline's like the shape of a heart, and there was a star right above it. And I was like, that's weird. Take a picture. I run inside, download the star app, look at it, and it's Star Group Karina, who is my girlfriend in the other room's name, and her sign Sagittarius. And I had never looked at the stars in my life. So I just sat down and said, "What do you want from me?" And then more researching, and then on the 3rd night, in my dreams, and these are vivid dreams I remember 6 years later, they were teaching me how to navigate the spiritual realms, and then they said, "Are you sure you want to take this path? It's not easy." And I said, "I humbly accept. Please just give me guidance and use me as a conduit." And then at that point, I felt weight come over me, and I went down to one knee, and I stood back up, and I had golden armor on, and they said, "So-and-so can no longer touch you anymore." And then I woke up 3 in the morning again with more downloads, thinking I'm going insane. From then on, I every day I'd wake up at 4 in the morning, 3, 4 in the morning, and I'd plug into Neville Goddard, Abraham Hicks, I Am affirmations, basically rewiring my subconscious mind and taking my power back, and getting out of victimhood. And through that, my girlfriend saw that, and she did not like it. She hated it. And so I kicked her out. I was like, I can't do this with you here. And at that point, I obviously didn't have much money coming in. I think I had $1,400 a month from disability at that point. My rent was $1,000. Electric was $200. I was living off of less than $150 a month for food and transportation. So I end up going to get certified through the state of Arizona for suicide intervention and peer support to help others. And in the class, the first day, I had a veteran, Vietnam vet, come talk to me, and he's like, "Hey, there's something about your soul. I need to hear your story. Is it okay if I take you to lunch?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So we go, I tell him this whole story, and he invites me to church, which I had resistance to. But I was like, I'm getting all these downloads, I'll just go see what happens. So church was normal, and then afterwards they had a men's Bible study group at his house, and everyone was talking about their spiritual gifts, why we were here. And throughout this whole awakening process leading up to this, I would constantly cry from gratitude, because I would get so many synchronicities and just reminders that I'm on my path. And it was always a hummingbird, butterflies, or dragonflies during that time. And then just the feeling of deep gratitude that just makes you cry because you're so tapped in and your heart's wide open. So they asked for prayers at the end, and I prayed for healing of my physical body and for financial help. And then I started crying from gratitude. The guy across from me stands up and he's like, he's being touched right now, and then starts approaching me, and then he puts his hand up and my collarbone popped back into place without him touching it. And I was just like, what is happening? And then he invited me over to his house for dinner the next day. And at this point I was deep in Nikola Tesla, frequency and vibration, crystals, all of it. Just deep diving, like 6 hours of videos a day. So I get to his house, and they're Christian, right? So I didn't expect them to have anything of this sort. But I walk in his house, and he's got an old school Rife machine that he treats homeless and other people on. He had CDs laying around that were charged with different frequencies. And when we sat down to eat, there was a CD on the table next to me, and it said silver. And I was like, well, what's that? And he's like, have you heard of colloidal silver? I was like, yeah, my dad actually cured his ulcers with it. And took it so long that it started turning his skin gray blue. And he's like, well, if you set your glass of water on that, it'll change the water to being colloidal silver water. And he's like, a really cool party trick is if you put anyone's alcoholic beverage on that, it completely annihilates the alcohol. So they could drink as much as they want. They will not get drunk. And so I was just in awe of this. He also had selenite crystals. But essentially he does kinesiology. So he was doing muscle testing, and he had all these charts he would go through, and he was able to pinpoint what's going on within you, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And he did it for my dad. And at this point I'm a skeptic, and he tells me what heavy metals are in my dad's blood from his hip replacement, that he was constipated and all this other stuff. So I call my dad. I'm like, hey Dad, are these the metals in your blood? He's like, how the F did you know that? And I was like, are you constipated? And he's like, what? And then I was like, are you constipated? He's like, why are you asking me this, son? And I was like, I'm working with a healer, and he says this is all the stuff going on with you. He's like, yeah, I haven't gone in 3 days because he was on all these narcotics for colon cancer, and he hadn't slept in a while. So I was like, is it okay if we send you healing? And he agreed. He said, I'll take anything I can get. So we sent healing, and he had this little chart where you would spin your finger on it, kind of like radionics. And then we sent him healing, and I got a text the next day that he was able to go to the bathroom, got the best sleep he had in a long time. And so that made me a believer in this stuff. So we did that for my dad, and then he goes and puts me on his table in the other room where he has all these CDs charged with over 8,000 frequencies, and your body takes what it needs. And then I was holding selenite crystals, and my energy was flowing, and he kept leaving the room, and he finally came back with tears in his eyes, and he said, I can't believe this. I've never met anyone like me. Did you know you can heal with your hands? And I was like, no. So he was teaching me this muscle testing stuff. We were going around helping homeless in the parks and praying with them, and at that time I was so wide open that I would pick up on all their pain and trauma, and I would be bawling, and it was really hard for me. And then he ended up taking me around to hospitals and placing my hands on people where things would happen. Everyone in the room would feel the tingles and all that stuff, and it was just a really big battle within my own mind to accept this. But I know that those people, even though they're kind of limited in their perspective as far as being Christian, they had so much faith and belief in knowing that miracles could happen, that there was constant miracles around them, and they were divine channels. I was just receiving so much information outside of that I felt like it was very limited. And so I went to school at Southwest Institute of Healing Arts for massage and energy work. When I was there, I learned the healing power of touch. And I used to not want anyone to touch me. But through massage, it helped my body heal. And they would often use me as a demonstration at the front of the class and the teachers would work on me, and you could see like my back's all messed up on one side, the side they worked on's good, all sorts of stuff. So it was pretty incredible. And then when I would do the energy work on people, they would start crying and things would happen. So I was about 7 months into school. At that time I was biking 25 miles a day, biking to school and home, and then the gym doing body work on people, and then going to food banks to get dried beans and rice, and just completely crying because I didn't have what I needed, and I've always been able to take care of myself and all of that. So it was a full-on surrender, and I could have easily gotten fronted cocaine and made ends meet, but I told God, I was like, if you want me to be homeless, I'll be homeless. And so that was a big test. And then next thing you know, I got a big back pay check for the increase in my disability benefits, and I have pictures. I was bawling on the floor. So about 7 months in, I had a friend that I did sales at Dun & Bradstreet with hit me up, and he's like, dude, have you done ayahuasca? And I was like, no, I haven't. I want to. And he's like, oh, I thought you had from all your spiritual posts. And I was like, no, I had a crazy natural spiritual awakening. And he's like, wow. And then I mentioned, I was like, I have this stuff called OBE. I don't even know when I bought it or how to use it. You know about it? And he's like, yeah, I'll come over and we can do that. And so he came over to the house I was staying at, and it was called Warrior Heart. And it was one of the most potent OBEs I've had to this day. And I have the recording on my social media as well. But essentially this is called, it's also known as like the breath of God. It's this tobacco snuff with other plants made in the Amazon, and it's blown up your nose, and it helps you clear your energy, to purge emotions, stuck emotions, and to clear and ground you. And then your body vibrates and you feel connected to everything in this pure bliss state. So he hits me with it, my head shoots back, and I'm like, ugh, and then going through it, it's painful. And I'm in this state of like bliss, and then it sinks right down into some hardcore trauma from childhood that I didn't remember. So I just begin bawling, like sobbing, shaking, and then we hit the second nostril, and right when I came out of it, like I said, the hummingbird's like my main guide. So I get done and I'm crying from gratitude, and I open my eyes and there's a hummingbird hovering in my face, and it just made me bawl because it, like, from gratitude, like I'm on my path. He ended up introducing me to Clay, who I ended up living with and serving medicine with, and I went and sat in ceremony with him, and my first ceremony was really profound. I went through all sorts of psychic surgeries. There was moments where the medicine would make me yawn, lock my jaw, and arch, and there's vibrations going up and down my spine, and tears just pouring out of my face, and I was getting like upgraded. I spoke to so many higher dimensional beings of wisdom and healing, and they essentially scanned my heart to see the purity of it and my intentions before giving me this wisdom. I was able to come in and out of the medicine so I could go deep within myself, and then I would sense when Clay the shaman was walking around, and I would come out of the medicine and sit up on the end of my mat and be like, are you okay? Do you need help? And he just looks at me and shakes his head, and it happened several times, and he's like, I swear you were sent from God. And so I'm going through this process of healing. I'm seeing planets being created. I'm going like deep into my trauma and healing. She was teaching me how to reach in my body and pull out stuck energy instead of purging like others, like by throwing up and the other end. So I was basically doing psychic surgery, and I was able to reach in my body and let go of things. And then I was shown my life path working with these medicines, and at the end of it, I told all the people who have sat in tons of ceremonies, everything that I experienced, and I'm talking about spirit of certain plants that you only know if you've gone to the jungle, and different beings like that. And they were all just like, this is your first one? And I was like, yeah, is this not normal? And so I was able to work in it, and that was something I was immediately gifted in. And I later learned I've been a shaman in many lifetimes, in Peru, Colombia, Africa. It's something that my soul has done in many lives, warrior and healer stuff. So I was showing my life path working with these medicines. I told the shaman, he kind of just smiled at me. I don't know if he hears it a lot and people just say that or what, but or if he kind of knew. But there was definitely a connection there. But I tried to run from it. So I had an artist friend that lived in Bali, and I got to know her because she painted Nikola Tesla, and I was big on Tesla. And so I'm telling her my story and how butterflies and dragonflies and hummingbirds are like my signs that I'm on my path. And she was blown away. Well, the next day, her whole house was swarmed in dragonflies. And she just called freaking out, like, this has never happened before. Like, she's like, I think you need to come here. You have a free place to stay. I know a healer here who is really powerful. And, like, I paint, and, like, his eyes are always different. Every time I see him, they shift. And so I was, like, really inspired. And I was like, okay, I'm going to buy a one-way ticket and just see what happens. So the time came for me to fly, and I got to the airport, and they told me I was 5 minutes late to check my bags, and I was pissed. So I went back to my Airbnb, and I drank a bunch of whiskey, and then woke up the next morning to a phone call, a voicemail from the VA hospital saying that I needed to be back in Wyoming to increase my disability benefits. So I hit up Clay again on my way back from California. I was flying out of LA. I came back, and I called him. I'm like, are you guys sitting this weekend? He said, yeah. I was like, do I have a spot, please? And he's like, you always have a spot. So then I came, and I sat, and I went through more healing. And then ayahuasca, or madre, grandmother, was like, you need to prepare yourself. You're going to Peru to receive more wisdom and information. And I was like, I don't have the money for that. What are you talking about? And she's like, don't worry about the money, you're going. And so then I go back home to Wyoming and go through the evaluation, and then I get a big increase in my disability benefits right before it was time to go to the jungle. So then I go to the jungle, and it's a month-long thing. They actually invited me to go with the facilitators before the rest of the group came, because Clay saw that I was gifted. So the first week was just the facilitators going through our own healing process. And then when the group of like 17 people came, and essentially Spirit was working through me to help them. So I would be able to sense when someone needed assistance, and I'd get up and go to them. I'd walk them to the bathroom. It was just all Spirit guiding me. And essentially, by the end of it, like, because we were there for 3 weeks together, I had told people, if you need help, just say Uber and I'll get up and help you, and then walk you to the bathroom. I took 2 people to the bathroom in this one time, and they're both in there for a while, and I'm standing outside of the Maloka, and Clay was singing my direction. It was just a screen, so I'm getting hit with this, and I'm like, oh, I have to purge. I'm going to throw up. And I grabbed the tree and started puking, and then I fell to my knees, and after I threw up, and I felt the earth breathing. I could feel her. I knew she was a living being, and it was just so humbling and incredible. The shaman that was in the jungle actually saw that I was gifted, at least, to the point where he said he would mentor me if I learned to speak Spanish, and I said, I'll be back. And so we get back to Arizona with Clay and his wife Cece, and they invite me to live with them and help them facilitate ceremonies here in Arizona. And there was 2 weekends a month we did it with 30 plus people. In the beginning, I just sat on one side of it was a big yoga studio, and the whole wall is filled with mats. And then in the middle, there's this uplifted thing where Clay would sit and direct it. And I don't know how many ceremonies it was, but I ended up getting moved by the door to the bathroom. And these ceremonies are done in pitch black, so you can't see anything. It helps with the visions. You can't see the person next to you, so you're not getting distracted. It's an inward process. And I was getting up and helping walk people through the dark into the bathroom. They would bring people to me that were really heavy in the medicine and going through some things and maybe had attachments, and I'd bring them in the back and clear them with tobacco, bring them back into their body, and then send them back out. Again, all spirit. There's no me. She was just teaching me these things along the way. And it was amazing. I am forever grateful for Clay seeing in me the light and then giving me the opportunity to walk this path. And he's since passed away, but he's always with me. I feel him. Sorry, I don't mean to cry, but anyways, so I'm doing that with him for a while, and then I got guided out of the country right before COVID. And essentially, I was so let me back up. So I'm doing all this. I'm living with Clay, and this woman that I actually met at my friend's gym. He was a vegan bodybuilder, and I was doing body work out of there while I was in school. And this girl had come in, and she was standing there alone. So I was just kind and said, "Hey, what's up?" And talked to her. And then she started following me on social media and following my path. And then she had her awakening, and so she was constantly asking for information or resources, and there was no intention from me. Like, at that point, I didn't want a girlfriend. My path was it. But about a year later, she hits me up that she was coming back to Arizona, and I've invited her over to do hape with me at Clay's house. And then she came over, and then we went out for food, and then we just hit it off. And it was unexpected for both of us. And she's much older than me. She's now 50, I'm 37, but she doesn't look it at all. But I later learned we've had so many lifetimes together that it was all divinely orchestrated. So anyway, we started hanging out every day, and then right before COVID, I was like, "Hey, we need to get out of here." I was like, "Let's go to Costa Rica." And I was like, "You want to go in like 3 days?" And she's like, "Yep." So we ended up going to Costa Rica. It's supposed to be like a 9-day trip, and then I was going to take her to sit with shamans in the mountains of Peru. On the 9th day, well, right when I got there, the doors opened up. I met an artist who got us medicines, and we were hanging out on the beach and having these really amazing experiences, and things just aligned. And the 9th day came around, and a friend that used to sit in our ceremonies in Arizona realized I was here and hit me up. And he said he was flying in the day we were leaving. So I was like, "Okay, I'll pick you up from the airport and take you to your hotel, and then we'll go fly out." And then we pick him up, and all flights are canceled. So then I was like, "Okay, so I guess we're staying here." And everything that I needed came to me with ease and grace. We were looking for houses. I found the perfect house in Uvita, walking distance to everything, gated, newer build. Normally it was like $1,800 a month, and I got it for $1,000 because no one else could fly in, and it's a tourist destination. 3-bedroom house with a pool, and walking distance to a swimming hole in the river, and all of it. So it was really amazing. And then I met a guy who served bufo. So I went and sat with that medicine, and that was very profound. That one's intense. I don't really recommend it for most people. I don't have any fear of death, and I actually welcome it because I know what's on the other side. It's incredible, unconditional love, knowing, and you're free from this heavy skin suit. And it's just pure bliss and love. You don't want to come back. So I lean into my death really confidently and stoically. Most people, I wouldn't say most, but a lot of people panic and scream because you don't realize how much of your subconscious is really clinging to your identity and your story. So I went through that, and he gave me what the normal dose was I think like 60 milligrams, and I went peacefully and had a really profound experience. I went back to the void, like my whole being dissolved. I didn't have anything to orient by. I just went to the void, and then the creation, the Big Bang, and then it was just profound. I went back and did it 2 more times, and he upped my dose to double what the normal was because he knew I could handle it. And you go meet God, you have these profound experiences and healing and reset. I came out of it the second time, and I just kept repeating, I am that I am. I am that I am. And I started crying from gratitude. At the moment I start crying, it starts raining. And then I have Jesus and Buddha, and I was just profound. Just got chills. So I had deep reverence for this medicine as well. I also did ayahuasca while I was there and had some profound experiences. I did what's called a dieta, which is where shamans do plant dietas, where you have a very bland diet and you drink teas made from certain plants for certain healing, strengths, abilities, and wisdom and songs. And I was supposed to go sit with a 95-year-old shaman in Peru to do the Noya Rao Dieta. This tree is called the Tree of Life. Its leaves are luminous. There's only 5 known to exist, they say, but highly protected by the people. So it's a very big honor to be able to diet this plant. And then I also did Bulgarian rose, which is the 2nd highest vibrational plant on Earth. So I'm taking these 2 for about 10 days, and the energy flowing through my body felt like air-conditioned, high energy up and down my spine. I often had to stop and breathe because it was intense. And then I was making my bed one day, and I start hearing music, and I look at my phone. I'm like, where's that coming from? And then it's just getting louder and louder. And I'm like, oh, this is what the shamans talk about. This is how they get their music. I was like, is this the Noya Rao? And it was like, went silent. Is this the rose? And then it started playing higher and higher and higher. And I was just like giddy and laughing. I'm not musically inclined, so I could never recreate it, but it was an amazing experience. Then my girlfriend started working for a doctor who helped Navy SEALs with Iboga, which is from Africa. It's a plant from Africa. And he'd help them with PTSD and addiction issues and different things like that. So I met him, and he agreed to allow me to do this medicine for my own spiritual growth and healing. And so the only thing I had to do was pay a therapist pre and post and talk to them. And I actually ended up teaching them. So I take Iboga. I have 2 nurses. I'm hooked up to heart monitors and the whole thing. And my girlfriend's a nurse, and so is the other nurse there. And I take the medicine, and it felt like I was dying. Like if I didn't focus on my breath and making my lungs function, it would have just been done. So what I did, I made a contract to come back in my body for the girls' sake. I don't care if I leave, but I don't want them to have to deal with my body. So I lean into my death, and immediately I pop out into a vision, and I'm watching my dog, who I had to leave behind to go to the jungle with a friend of mine, and it broke my heart. It was like losing a child. Medicine made me, and it was just so hard. And I'm watching as my friend's playing with him in the backyard, and I just start laughing. Like, this is the first thing I see when I die is my dog, how much I love him. Because he was there for my whole awakening. He's such an angel dog. And then it just starts playing. I went through my whole life review and specific events in my life, and it was just incredible. Certain events I didn't remember. I mean, I was above my head in boot camp when they were shaving my head, and that was like, and I said, oh, that was the worst day of my life. I don't look good bald. So I went through all of this, and then seeing things for what they were. And then I actually went, like, all the trauma and how it impacted me. And then I went through my families. I went through my mom's life and saw the trauma she had from a child and being terrified from the abuse going on in the house, to her being a teenager and yelling at each other and then being kicked out of the house. I saw everything. And then I went through my dad's and saw all that stuff and the abuse and his own depression and anger and all this stuff. So you start to see things from a higher perspective and really have compassion and love for them. And you're able to forgive yourself and others from a much higher place. I traveled the cosmos and back. I saw planets, and I was all over the place. And at the 2-hour mark, I thought I was done. And I was like, hey, what time is it? And they're like, it's only been 2 hours. And I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, I've been around the cosmos and back. You guys need to take notes. I'm not going to remember all this. So from then on out, I was yelling out things that I was seeing, and they're taking notes, which they'd never had anyone do. And essentially, I went through the history of Earth to different periods in time when we were far more advanced, and all the way back to Neanderthals. I did see a Neanderthal in a cave, and it just felt so dumb. And I was like, I hope that wasn't me. So then I go into my Akashic records, and I went through, like, you go down this like wormhole, and it's all the lights come in, and then it opened up into a big space. And it looks like file folders, and it goes like a line, and then it gets wider like this, and then all the way down to like your highest timeline is what I perceived it as. And essentially, I asked, I was like, how many times have I incarnated? And it was like the beginning of time. My mind couldn't process. And I was like, what the hell? I was like, how many times on Earth? And this counter goes up and stops at 1,423. And I was just in shock. And then I'm in the living movie of my lifetime. So the first one was a lady planting a garden, and then the seed grew into a sunflower, and I was the sunflower waving at myself, and I just started laughing. I was like, okay, how about human? And then the first one was I was a gladiator in the Colosseum, and it's like a movie played by God, because it was like the gravel behind me, it zooms out like this, and then it shows me walking ahead of the camera kind of thing. And then I'm in the body, and then third person, so you get a good idea of what's going on. I was this giant gladiator. But I went out into the Colosseum, and there was a giant, probably 2 to 3 times my height. And he killed me so fast. He was not just big, he was fast. And so he chopped me in the neck, and I died. And then my ego goes, well, did I win any? And then it shows me killing all these people. I'm like, okay, that was my ego. I don't need to see that. The next one, I was a knight on a horse, had like a pointy metal helmet, and the enemy rode by me and stabbed me through my side, and then I fell off my horse, and my helmet was in the dirt, and I was just driving my legs until I bled out. I was in so much pain. And then I died, and then I watched my body decay and grass grow over the armor. Another one, I was a warrior running across a grassy, lumpy field, and it's showing me sprinting, and then all of a sudden it zooms out, and then I see this stone catapult, and it launches this giant boulder, and then I stopped, started running the other direction, and then the boulder lands, bounces, and crushes me, and my legs are mangled out the back. Another one, I was in the body, and I'm looking at my feet, and I have 2 little cloth shoes on, and I felt really weak. And I was like, what's going on, you know? And then it pans out third person, and there were 2 men dragging me. I was a woman, and they tarred my face and chest and lit me on fire and killed me and dropped me. And then I saw the Salem witch trials. I then asked to see like one of my higher timelines, and then it was like the land masses were completely different. So I assumed Mongolia, but it was kind of like Google Maps zooming out and back in. But I was on a mountaintop, and I walk up, and this lady's cleaning my feet, and then I go hug this other monk healer, and we're sitting at the top of a mountain, and there's people sitting, waiting, and then coming up one by one, and I was slapping their backs with feathers and chanting and doing healing work. And then it kept zooming in and out. I'm like, show me again, show me again. I was like, Mongolia? And they're like, sure, moving on. And just kept going. So that was a really powerful experience for me. And I mean, I saw unicorns were real. I went through so much stuff. It took me into deep underground bases. where I saw them doing DNA. First, I saw tons of dead humans. They're harvesting them like we do cattle. Conveyor belts, blood flowing, like hanging on hooks. It was really gruesome. And then I saw DNA experiments where they were creating things that are so bizarre, beyond your imagination. And I saw this thing, and it looked like the leg of an animal. And then it was like, so the leg goes up, and then the top part of the leg, and there was an eyeball here. It was like bizarre. And it's jumping. And then I see two guys with hazmat suits bringing bags that are moving, and they release them, and they're almost like a chicken body, but it went up into a neck with gnashing teeth. And these things went and ate the other things. And I was like, what the fuck? And then it showed these half man, half beast things. But there was a knowing that there's no soul spark in these things, these creatures. There's no divinity. It's like completely void. They don't know what joy, laughter, bliss is. It's all like gruesome bloodlust, harvesting sexual energy. They had dungeons where they had these half man, half beast things, raping humans and harvesting that energy. It was really dark. And then I was in an underground base, and I came face to face with a reptilian, and I had so much fear. And then I stopped, and then it just walks by me, but it kind of stopped, like it sensed me, and then kept going. What else? So much stuff. And then it showed me future events. So what I saw, this is, 5 years ago? I saw China preparing for war. I didn't see a war happen. I saw a change in flag, and it was a red flag, so I don't know what that is, if it's Taiwan or something, but I saw poisons being dropped from airplanes. I saw thousands of dead people wrapped in white plastic on floating barges. And then I was in Wall Street, and I watched as the whole system collapsed and shocked the world. And essentially, the system collapse shocks the world. It showed like a brief depression period. And then it showed me picking people up off the street and handing them this multicolored currency. And then later I learned about like Nasara, Jasara, the rainbow currency, and I started investing in silver. And then I got into XRP and XLM and all of that for the quantum financial system. I also saw things in the future in my own personal life. So I saw my grandma losing her mind and getting dementia, and I asked how to help, and they showed blood work and this and that, and I told my mom, and she ignored me. And then weeks later, she was visiting my aunt and uncle, and they got her tested for dementia, and she has it now. I saw my mentor Clay, who I served medicine with, in court, and then 2 weeks later he was raided by the DEA illegally. They ended up dropping the charges, but it happened. What else did I see that came to fruition immediately? There was just so many different things that were just reconfirming my visions, and it happens every time I do Iboga. So it also made me break up with my girlfriend that I'd been with for only a couple months. It showed me that we weren't supposed to be together, and that I needed to tell her now. And I was like, I'm not doing that in front of her friend. That's messed up. And it showed us getting into fights and arguments. And then I was like, I'm not telling her right now. And then it gets worse, and she's throwing stuff at me. It's really bad. And then I was like, fine, my higher self is making me do this. And I was like, Alia, I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I love you, but we're not supposed to be together right now. And I started bawling, and then I processed it like immediately, and she had to sit there for the rest of the time while I'm in ceremony, devastated. And it was I felt so horrible because it disconnected me from her completely. I had no longer had any emotions towards her like that. But immediately after me doing that, it put me in a brand new healed body. And I didn't realize how much pain I carry in my body. I was crying and shaking because it was so incredible. It felt like a weightless, air-conditioned skin suit. And it was just so, like, I can't wait till we shift, because my body is ridden with pain and aches and heavy. So that's coming. And then I actually worked with ETs. I saw them a couple times. I saw like almost like a predator looking ET on a space platform, and he had a backpack that was like 4 times his size, and he's walking with it. Fear came up, and then he just puts his hand up like, we're good. Walks into this thing, and then that closes in, and he had a one-man ship, and he flied off. Another one was I was on some property in a big grassy field, and an ET landed his ship and came out. We were communicating telepathically, and the ET puts his hand up and completely turns his ship invisible. And then I asked for healing of my back and posture, because I broke my back. Like, I have compression fractures in my mid back. I got my 2 lower discs are broken and slid forward. I got compressed discs in my neck, obviously nerve damage. So I see an ET pop up, and he points left, and what I see is what I would think would be med beds. So there's these 5 things, and one of them, there's a hologram of me in it. And so I start approaching it, and my physical body flattens out, and I just had vibrations going up and down my spine. And when I came out of the medicine, my friend and my ex-girlfriend now were there, and they were in shock because it looked like I reversed age 10 years, and my posture was perfect. I didn't have to pull my shoulders back or anything, and I was told I need to meditate to anchor it in, which I arrogantly didn't do because I felt good, and it faded back out. So I didn't anchor it in to this reality. But I know miracle healing can happen. I've seen it. I've experienced it. I'm trying to think if anything. There's just so much that I've gone through that I'm just trying to give you guys a summation so you know who I am, and like, I don't know, inspire you, to give you some courage to go through these processes to heal and know yourself as a soul, and the expansiveness of creation and how much divine support you have and all of that. But so I ended up, I lived there for a couple more months, and it was really hard for both of us because we both like loved each other, but that thing was kind of cut off. And I felt horrible because she's like, I'm never going to find anyone like you. And she was just devastated and then suicidal even. And I didn't know how to help her, but I took mushrooms and I would channel messages for her, which all came true later. And then I told her that she's an amazing woman, but we have to separate right now. So I went back to Arizona. She stayed for 2 more months. And in that process, she sat with these all women's groups, had a lot of women come support her, and then did further healing of herself. And it's like she jumped out of one relationship into one with mine, so she didn't have that period of time to truly heal. And then she even said that in her past, she would react like I saw in the vision. She would throw stuff, break stuff, all that stuff. So I hear from her about a month later, and she's like, everything you told me came true. And she's like, thank you so much. And she had gone through her healing process and really started finding her own. So 2 months later, she comes back into Arizona, and I go to meet her just to hear about her healing journey and all this other stuff. And we reconnected, and it was not planned again. And we're still together now. So after that, when I got home from Costa Rica, I was learning from how to cure cancers in Costa Rica from holistic doctors and other people as well. So when I got home, my mentor, who got raided, lost his purpose. They took everything from him. He then had cancer. 2 days after I arrived, he said he had cancer. So I'm telling him all these things to do, and he didn't want to listen to me. So he went and paid 20 grand for another person to tell him and put him on these diets and stuff. And so I was juicing for him every day. I was taking care of him, trying to inspire him, but he really got sucked into doubt and non-belief. And it was really hard to witness because he taught me everything I knew pretty much at that point outside of spirit, you know. He was always really happy-go-lucky, goofy, really lighthearted. He was like a magician on instruments and singing during ceremonies and flutes, and he was just incredible. He was an awesome human being. And so once he got his purpose taken away, it was like the light shut off. And I kept telling him, like, every time you come around the corner, I need you to pretend that you just got the phone call that all the charges were dropped. I was like, you haven't done anything bad. I was like, I'll die on this hill. And most of the people, once he got raided, left. They scattered like roaches because they didn't want to get in trouble. And I was like, I will die on this hill. I was like, this is healing humanity. I'm not going to run from this. And so I was one of the few that stood around and stayed with him. And the rest were cowards. But so I kept telling him that, like, to keep visualizing that happening, and then he just resisted so hard, and then he had a hard time staying on diet and being motivated to take all the supplements and this and that, and it got worse. And you know, I was standing over him in bed and just crying. I was like, I cannot fight for you. If I could, I would, but you have to take your power back, man. You have to claim your power. It's like, you can do this. And I was bawling, and it was just real hard to witness, but I watched him decay, and to the point where I had to pick him up and carry him, and he would pee on me and all sorts of stuff, and it was heartbreaking. And he ended up passing away. And well, prior to that, before he lost all consciousness, he signed his house and all his stuff over to his son to protect it, because he didn't want the government to get it. And the wife was also listed on the lawsuit, even though she wasn't guilty of anything. Like, they didn't have proof. So he signed it over to his son. And his son is self-absorbed and greedy, and no emotions towards others. And I was more of his son than his son was. So it was, once he signed that over, I came home, and I'm taking care of him. I quit doing everything, and I'm literally taking care of him every day, and losing sleep because he was up at all hours, and it was really tough. But I went to dinner because someone else came to help, and I came back to a sticky note on my door of my room saying I needed to be out by the end of the month, and he's going to raise my rent to $1,000, which I was paying $400 in a house, like, with them, doing all the caretaking, and their whole mortgage was $700. So I got pissed. I was furious. I cannot stand greedy people, self-absorbed people. So it really triggered me big time. And I wanted to knock all his teeth out. I was so furious. So then when he passed away, the son took everything and left his wife with nothing, even took her car. So it was really hard. And then I was furious with him. And I did a ceremony of Changa, which is the medicine I make, which is about 45 minutes to 2 hours. I make it a special blend that no one else does. It's something I was guided to do when he got sick and started doing one-on-one ceremonies with people. It's kind of like smokable ayahuasca, very visual, intense, but healing and liberating without the purging, and it's short. It's kind of like businessman's ayahuasca, like 2 hours and you're back to normal. Every year, our birthday, me and my girlfriend go to ceremony together to heal ourselves and also connect on a deeper level. So it was my girlfriend's birthday, and we had rented a cabin up north, and we combined mushrooms with Changa. And so we took the mushrooms, and then when those start peaking, I sent her in with Changa, and she has a lot of resistance to leaving her body sometimes. So she starts shaking, and I put my hand on her, and then she went. And right when she crossed over, they were like, we don't have much time. We need to do this and that. And so they did an actual physical surgery. She had a pain in her breast, and she saw like surgical stuff going on and them pulling out stuff, and she was shown other lifetimes and told what she should be eating and different things like that. And she's still in the medicine, and she's like, they said to hurry up, you need to get in here. So then I go and I sit and do the medicine, and I immediately cross over, and I'm in this expanded state of consciousness. The monkey mind is no longer there. I'm vibrating at this high level of knowing and love and bliss. And then they basically said, you need to forgive his son. I was like, I'm not forgiving that piece of shit. I was like, why are you guys being assholes? And they're like, you're being the asshole. You have to forgive him and give him $500. And I was like, you are kidding me. I was like, that guy's not getting a fucking dime from me. And I sat there so angry, and I finally processed it, and I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I have to genuinely mean it from the heart and have no like internal battle with it. So I really had to process this. And then I was told to forgive other people. And then my PTSD psychologist, who is also psychic, I found out later, the one who saved me from court, she went above and beyond and all this stuff. Once I had my awakening and told her everything, she told me she was psychic and that she had to hide it from veterans because they'd run out of her office screaming and she would get in trouble. So she saw the light in me far before I ever knew. And she passed away from cancer as well. So she came to me in this ceremony and was telling me I need to forgive and this and that. And it was just like incredible. And then they were teaching me this new type of language, like light language. And I was just in this heightened state of awareness and being. And these experiences, like I can talk about them all day, but until you actually go do this yourself, you're not going to understand it. There's so much that's ineffable. It's beyond words. It's got to be felt and known. But I continued to essentially serve this medicine and do one-on-one ceremonies with people, and it kept evolving. And I often questioned if I should be doing this, and spirit would come through other people that sat with me, and they're so proud of me. You need to keep doing this. Da, 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 da. So there's constant confirmation. I don't ever want to be a person who's serving out of greed or ego. Like I'm big on staying humble and always doing what's divinely guided and orchestrated and checking myself, because I saw it so much where there's greed and ego involved and people wanting to feel special and feeding off of other people's highs, if you know what I mean, kind of like vampiric, because these people are having profound experiences. Those people associate it with you, and I'm like, no, this isn't me, this is God. I'm just a channel, I'm a door holder for you to go see for yourself. So that's something I'm very big on as far as remaining humble and being a pure conduit, so that you're not bringing your distortions into other people's journeys and feeling special. We're all special, and we all have a unique piece of the puzzle. So essentially, things evolved, and I have these giant 15-pound tuning forks. If you look up Earth Tuned on Instagram, that's my buddy. He made these. You got to download to make them in ayahuasca, and they are incredible. They'll vibrate through your whole body. They're kind of like extensions of myself, so I'll comb your field, and it'll get sticky. I'll do removals. I mean, I pulled entities out of people, different things like that, but so I started doing one-on-ones like this and helping people heal. And then I ended up doing retreats with a psychic friend of mine who is highly gifted. And it was very profound. So I'll go into those more later, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of my backstory, who I am, why I got into this, and hopefully inspire you to have faith and trust in your journey and to explore and have curiosity, because God admires courage, and you're never going to get in trouble for going to seek truth and seek who you are and all of that. We're all divine sparks of God. We're all here with a higher purpose. This is one of the biggest times you could be alive, for the shift in humanity to the new golden age. And I've seen it over and over again, and it's coming. And your job is to do your own inner healing work, to figure out why you think certain ways, why you feel certain ways, what triggers you, and heal those things. Forgive yourself and forgive others. Release all the shame and guilt around your past mistakes, because that's something that holds you back. And you did the best you could with the information you had at the time. Let it go. Like, you don't have to carry those burdens. And that's what these medicines do, is they allow you to release all this weight, because all of us are lugging around backpacks full of rocks, doubt, shame. I was a bad person here, this, that, and you're weighted down, and then you can't connect. So take that backpack off, set it down and thank it for its lessons, and then keep moving and spread your wings, because we all need to step into our power right now. We all need to know who we are. We need to reprogram our minds. We need to use our imagination as divine creators to envision the new golden age. Do not go into fear porn. Do not listen to all these. Like, I've gone deep into all the conspiracy theories, and I will tell you right now, it's okay to absorb that information, but do not make it your truth until it's confirmed by spirit. And that comes from directly connecting yourself. And you want to, when you go into these spaces, you have to be willing to let everything you think you know go for truth, no matter how painful it is. And quit latching on to people's stories and this and that. You are a divine creator. What do you want to see in the world? What do you want to create? What kind of peace and freedom and joy and laughter do you want to live in on a daily basis? Because it's all available. You just have to connect yourself. And that's why the work is important. There's no external savior. You save yourself, and those that are ready are going to ascend into this state of being and hold that space for others to do the same, so they have the courage to also do that. That's all our job is. Plant seeds, inspire others, love, like unconditional love, no judgment. Release all judgment, because when you start judging, you're telling spirit that you want to learn what the other side of that is, because you can't view it from neutrality and non-judgment. You're not trusting the divine. And so every soul is on their journey, and no matter how bad it looks to you, their soul may need to learn from that darkness. I've had really dark lives I was shown, where I was chopping people up and doing torture and all sorts of stuff. And I've also had lives walking with Jesus. Your soul came into this place to experience duality and polarity and play the game of forgetting, all to remember again. Because when you're in a place of unconditional love and bliss and you know everything, that's boring. I sat with light beings and it was pure like elation and bliss and love, and then it numbed out, and then I was like, well, now what? And they're like, that's why we came here, to experience it, to go through the trials of life. And you have to have love for all of it, including your suffering. And I've been through a lot, and I didn't even cover everything, but I am forever grateful for my pain and my suffering, because it put me on the path I'm on today. And I have never been more full in my heart. And the thing is, I facilitate medicine ceremonies. I heal people with frequency, light, and sound. And I get to witness God in action in these people. And it is the most humbling thing. It's the most humbling thing that anyone could ever ask. And it's not something I sought out. In fact, I tried to run from it. But you each have a divine path. So do not try to do something because you think you're going to get attention and feel important or anything like that. Tap into who you are. Your soul is divine. It has its own gifts and abilities. And I have all sorts of friends that can tap into your other lifetimes, so you can get a bigger picture of who you are on a soul level, to heal karmic cords, and to truly step and walk in your path. And if I can't help you, I have people who can. So there's a little bit about me. I will be doing more videos. I'm going to share more on the visions I've gotten. My recent Iboga, which was 37 hours, which again, I saw the financial collapse and reset that liberates humanity. I saw them trying to steal the election and Trump winning. Trump is not a bad guy. There's all these conspiracy theorists, and I never cared for Trump at all. Never voted in my life. My first Iboga ceremony, he was in my visions giving me direction and telling me to take Epsom salt baths, and then I later got told by my guides I need to do that. So he showed up good in all these visions. And then again, recently, I saw the whole assassination attempt. I saw a bullet flying and chipping someone's ring, and then that's what cut him. So there was a real bullet, and that happened according to what I was shown. And it was 360 degrees in slow motion. But they try to steal the election. They fail. Trump wins. And then we're moving into a new golden age. Those that are in the vibration of love, faith, trust, compassion, and knowing are going to experience a whole different reality than those stuck trapped in fear, doubt, shame, guilt, and confusion. So be mindful of what you're taking in, and that includes things you're eating, listening to, and watching. Do not feed your mind and your subconscious with stuff you do not want to see in the world. Don't do it. You're a creator. I was guided to Costa Rica right before COVID, and I got to sit on beaches while everyone here in the U.S. is fighting over toilet paper and going in chaos. You'll be guided. Anyways, I love you guys. I look forward to talking to you more. I am starting a podcast with a friend of mine where we're going to have myself and other healers that I know and I trust come on to share their wisdom. But I love you guys.